I just believe in the process, and we're going to win going through the process.
Now, Bills Mafia. It's time for the main event. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Bills Mafia, welcome to the Red, White and Buffalo Blues. Joined by Robin, and as you can see here, we're joined by the lovely Hannah Wilkes. Hannah, welcome to the show again for the second time. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me back. I don't often get invited back to things, so this is exciting.
Obviously, you are should we say a diehard fan, Rams fan? Or is that coming up? Yeah. And we're going to obviously talk Rams and Bills and obviously the opening game in what was about 30 odd days now, was it? 37 days, something like that? I have no idea.
37, I think, yeah. Yes, September the 8th, Thursday, September the 8th.
Yeah. But for obviously people that didn't watch or listen to the first show when we had you on, just want to get obviously a brief introduction about yourself, how you obviously got into the NFL, and obviously how also you became a Rams fan.
Yeah, so my name is Hannah Wilkes. I work for Sky Sports across a whole range of sports, but a big chunk of my life is the NFL, which I'm very fortunate that is my job and that I get to indulge my passion for the game into actually putting a roof over my head. So yeah, I got into the sport. It's funny actually. I never watched the NFL or had much awareness of it beyond like knowing the name Tom Brady and knowing about the Super Bowl. But I never really watched it until I started working for Sky. And I was a runner on one of the London games a very long time ago now. It was the Buccaneers against the Jay Cutler-led Bears at Wembley. And I got loaned out to Fox with the host broadcaster, and I watched it from the gantry up there and alongside Daryl Johnston, who I was like, he's wearing some blingy rings, not knowing they were Super Bowl rings. And I loved what I was seeing. I was watching rugby. So there's these guys hitting each other hard. You can hear the smashes, the balls flying out in all directions. And I'm like, this is chaos, but I like it. So I got my first lesson in NFL and American football from Daryl Johnston, which is pretty, in hindsight, I wish I'd been aware of who he was at the time. And maybe should have been doing my research as a runner as to who was going to be working with. But, you live and you learn. And from then on in, I just got so into it, started watching it on a Sunday night, started talking to the guys in the office about it and learning more about it. And the obsession sort of grew from there. And then there were some opportunities doing like little Facebook Lives and social media stuff for the NFL coverage, started geeking out on fantasy football and various forms of it that we've played different versions through the years. And then the Rams, it was funny because I was trying on a lot of different teams besides, like, right, didn't grow up with this sport. Who am I going to root for? So I tried on a few. A very dear friend of mine has been out in the States for a very long time. She's a Steelers fan. She had some strong opinions on who I was not allowed to support. And that ruled out quite a few. And it wasn't until I was watching All or Nothing, Los Angeles Rams season. I think they're on Hard Knocks that year as well, or around that time. And just actually kind of seeing the inner workings of a team there amidst that move from St. Louis back to LA, and kind of needing fans and actually getting to know some of the players and coaches and all the rest of it through that documentary is kind of what made me sort of go, Rams are quite an interesting team. And then they were playing in London, I think that season, maybe the season after. So saw them a few times over here as well and declared myself a member of the Ramily. And it's been a fun, productive, championship-winning ride ever since.
That's good. I mean, it's the London game really that obviously probably got most of the newer fans into it, regardless of what teams they support and all that. I know, obviously, we're still waiting for the Bills to come back. Hopefully, when
soon. They have to at some point in the next 7 years, I believe, based on the CPA.
We're hoping that they actually win the Super Bowl this year and they decide to bring them to London next year. But
that is where it gets tricky. I think it's hard to see a Super Bowl winners in London.
We can always dream and all that. I know Robin wants to ask a question about the London game.
Yeah, well, it was a sort of it was a two-parter because I was actually at the Bears Tampa Bay game as well. From what I remember, I think it was just off the top of my head, I think it was something like 24-17, something like that. I remember that because Tampa had it. It was there, yeah, because the Bears won, but it was live going into like the last 2 minutes. So I seem to remember it was actually if that was the first game that you watched, that's not a bad introduction actually, because that was one that went right to the last possession and it went right down. It was a 4th down conversion. I just remember that, and the Bears got it, and then they just kneeled it out for like the last minute. So I do remember that.
Because I honestly couldn't tell you any of the details. I have a feeling there was like some wild run at some point. But I honestly can't remember many of the details. At that point, I was mostly excited about the fact that Jay Cutler was married to the girl from the Hills and Laguna Beach. That's where I was.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
But things have changed.
There's
going to be there's going to be, pointless and mastermind champion. I don't like to talk about it. The question I did want to ask about the international series. So me and Matt managed to see the Bills independently. We didn't know each other then back in 2013. And there was always a question at that point when at that time, I think they were playing 2 games a year. It very quickly went to 3 games a year. And then it was 4 games a year. And it really felt at that point that it was really a question of when rather than if that there would be a London franchise. And people, I even remember at the meeting, we got to meet Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas, and Neil Reynolds was hosting it. And so we did this sort of meet and greet with the fans. And it really felt like we were even like throwing around London names. We were talking about Royals and, that kind of thing. And, Palace or something like that as being like a London team. And we've still got the fans, we've still got the sellout, but in the past couple of years, it's almost seemed like where it was moving from maybe 32 teams expanding to 36, and that London would be possible a new destination, or that if the franchise became open, and a lot of people talked about Jacksonville, and obviously there was time even for the Rams actually when they were leaving St. Louis, perhaps even Buffalo at one point when the owner died. But in the last year or two, it almost seems that it's like the 32 teams seem to be staying as they are, but with a greater international look. So we'll still have the London game, but now there's a Berlin game. They're talking about a Dublin game, so obviously a lot of Irish contingent, Mexico games, probably Canada games, and then for obviously we wouldn't get you to betray any trade secrets that but what's your sense that you see perhaps the international series moving in the next few years?
The fact that you think I know any trade secrets is hilarious. I am always the last person to know. And also it's Munich, not Berlin.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
So this is what I would say to that is I think that conversation about a UK-based franchise, a London franchise, always was one that was had around the international games. And when we were having 4 games a year, you start to think, well, that's half a home season. Why not make it one team? I think the NFL is now much more focused on growing the game globally than in any one market. And I think you've seen that with the home marketing areas that were announced back end of last season. So you've got teams that are dedicated to growing themselves in certain markets. So like the Rams have got Australia, for example. In the UK, we've got the Vikings, the Jets, the 49ers, the Bears, Jacksonville, someone else who I'm forgetting, and that's going to really annoy me. That'll come to me later. But you've got those around key markets like Canada, Mexico, Germany. Seahawks are, they've got their home marketing area in Germany, and that means that teams can independently be operating and marketing themselves in those areas independently of the league. So it means, for example, that the Jaguars game at Wembley, that's not one of the league's sort of international games. That's one they're doing because the UK is one of their marketing areas and they see real value in that. So I think you're going to see that focus much more internationally. Like you say, we've got London games this year. We've got German games this year. There might be more in the future. It's a multi-year commitment to playing games in Germany where they have got a huge fan base.
Yes.
It has to be said. It's in many ways sort of overdue that they're playing a game there because they've got professional leagues out there. They've got a huge fan base, a lot of history there with the NFL Europe. You've got a game in Mexico again this year, Mexico City. So I think we're going to see that focus more. And I think that the reasons are multitude, and I can't speak to why. Like, I don't work for the NFL, but something I noticed and something I've hypothesized on is that I think one thing that sort of COVID and the pandemic threw up was the realities of how difficult it could be to have a whole team, a whole franchise in a different continent and a different time zone. We saw it in rugby league during the pandemic. The Canadian teams couldn't compete, and they've not come back to the Super League as a result. So I think things shift, and I think there's much more value for the league to be global rather than just concentrate on growing in one country or even one continent. And I think that in itself is actually really exciting because, you know, it's a sport that is a US product. It's so American, but it has got these growing fan bases, and it's always got cult following for groups of people over here. And I think you get a greater product when something's truly global and it benefits everyone. So I noticed this year at the London Games that we did have, and they did feel a bit different because it was COVID still lingering. But that London franchise conversation didn't really come up in the way it had previously. So I think that conversation's moved on, but I think we'll probably see more international games as a result, both here and elsewhere. I hope.
It's almost similar to back in the day, obviously when soccer was booming over here, we took it abroad, and obviously that became a big worldwide global thing. Pretty much the NFL, in a way, has pretty much followed that lead almost.
I think if you look at the Premier League is so huge around the globe, and you look at the Manchester United shirts that get sold in China and everywhere else, and I think you want that, right? That's what they want to see, because it means more money.
Yeah, and they always vote against Rangers and Celtic joining the Premier League as well, don't they? Like every year they apply, don't they?
I'm not getting into that.
No, but I'm saying the Premier League vote against. I'm not taking a position on that. I'm just stating that's what they do, because I think, as you say, I mean, I was married in Indonesia, and everywhere you go, there's a Manchester United shirt.
I was just in Kenya. And they have buses painted with the faces of Chelsea players and with the Chelsea badge all over them, which was very confusing to start with. It turns out there's a huge Chelsea fan base in Nairobi.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but let's move on. Let's move back. Let's go back. It's Bills. Let's talk Bills first, and then we'll go into preview the Rams and get your views, and let's preview the week 1 match. Obviously, from last season, what the Bills have done this season, including taking a very nice player from the Rams, ironically, Von Miller. How do you see the Bills, Hannah, actually this season, and what you've seen of them from the offseason and the draft?
I mean, less from off-season moves in the draft with the Bills and more just what they did last season. They weren't necessarily the standout team that was kind of pulling everyone's attention through the regular season, but my goodness, Josh Allen in primetime has become a whole different kettle of fish. And what they did in the postseason as well. I mean, 12 seconds, guys. 12 seconds. I don't need to tell you.
13 seconds.
13 seconds, sorry.
Don't take a second off that.
Yeah. Don't make us show the tattoos.
No, and I think the thing with the Bills is they were a good team last year. They were there or thereabouts, and I think they've only made moves to make themselves sort of more dangerous. Von Miller, what I will say is this: I would love to see Von Miller win a Super Bowl with 3 different teams, and the third one be the Bills this season. I would love that for him. I think that's a great move. I think what you're noticing is a lot of people using plays from the Rams playbook here as to how to build your roster. So I think Von Miller, great. I think as well, James Cook, the draft pick, running back, I think is going to really, if he does what he's supposed to do and be able to do, I think he's going to really open up that offense, because that's the thing, right? You don't really have a run game, let's be honest, which is no bad thing when you've got Josh Allen, but it would be nice to have that extra.
He is our run game.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everyone's hoping Josh doesn't run quite so much this year. He needs to fix him a little.
At least less, more run when intended rather than just running.
Yes.
But that's the fun. That's what makes the Bills fun to watch as well. Yeah, so I think James Cook adds a really fun dimension to the offense. I think Von Miller is great on the defense, and I think what you've got so much depth. You've got a quarterback who, the way he has grown from being like so-so to elite level QB he's one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. So I mean, all the preseason hype, everyone's saying it. Bills, Super Bowl, it's this year. Allen's still on a rookie contract, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's real, but there are things you just can never legislate for. So you've got to stay healthy, which is the main thing. But I think the talent is there, and you should definitely make it to an AFC Championship game this year, and should really be in the Super Bowl. And Kaya Elam, is it Elam? I never can get his name right. Yeah, I think as well, him in the secondary is huge. I think he would be a great addition. So I think they drafted really well. I'm excited for the Bills this year. I really am. I spent too much time with Phoebe Shackett because I do find myself rooting for you guys an awful lot.
That's it. It was lovely. You've got a second team.
Obviously. Yeah. Bills 100%. I'm not just saying this because it's Bills podcast. 100% my second team. My sister, who's been trying to get into the NFL for years, she's finally last year decided she was a Bills fan. I told her, I feel like Josh Allen's a good fit for you. She's fully in now. Although every time she texts me, she's like, the Bulls one. I'm like, the Bills.
Also correct.
But there's the commitment's there.
Yeah. But no,
sorry, Matt, you were speaking.
No, carry on.
No, I was going to say was when it comes to the Super Bowl, it's not so much Super Bowl or bust, because that's the question that always asks: is it Super Bowl or bust? It's Super Bowl or failure this year. It's not. We will still have the chance, as long as Josh Allen's our quarterback. We will have a chance of a Super Bowl for the next, I think, 5 or 10 years, come what may, because there's always that possibility. But having got to the championship game 2 years ago, having had an absolute heartbreaker against the divisional game, and that's a whole other question about what would have happened in the championship game. I think the Bengals may very well still have won. A lot of people say 13 seconds from a Super Bowl win. I disagree. I think there was a very good chance that we would have been absolutely. And I think the same thing happened to the Chiefs in that championship game. They ran out of steam in the second half because of what had happened in the previous week, and I think that very likely could have happened first. But I think what it is true to say, if we don't make the Super Bowl, the season has to be regarded really as a disappointment. And if we make the Super Bowl and don't win it, then again, I think the disappointment is still just as strong. So it's Super Bowl, please. I think this year, I think it's like, I think we, as exciting as it is to talk about Von Miller and all the new draft signings, and Kyrie Lamb's great and James Cook's great, and we've got a drafted wide receiver, Khalil Shakir, who could be very, very exciting as well. As great as it is to talk about potential, I have to deliver on the potential now. It's like, well, we've got a good enough roster to win the Super Bowl. We're going to go and win the Super Bowl now, then, haven't we? I think that's our thing.
As someone who had to live the whole Super Bowl or bust narrative for their team last year, it gives added stress, but there is also that knowledge that in football, there are things that just don't go your way. You don't know what's going to happen with injuries. You don't know what's going to happen in overtime, what calls are going to go your way, this, that, and the other. So enjoy the ride, enjoy being right up there. And like you say, when you've got Josh Allen, you've got Stephon Diggs, you're going to be in that conversation for years to come. But it does feel like this with those extra pieces that this year is a real opportunity.
Yeah. So let's do it. There's 37 days. Well, I've worked it out. There's 37 days. I was crunching the numbers in my head till the opening day. I'm trying to match Robin sometimes, where he actually just goes like that, and he actually gives a date, he gives a play, gives a fact or something like that. He just was a click of his finger. But Rams week 1, obviously, Rams. You even said before we came on, the draft probably will be like 20 seconds long or something like that. How did you feel that the Rams did in the offseason with obviously the limited draft picks and obviously what they managed to do in regards to who they signed and obviously who they released? Obviously, one of them, obviously, as I say, Von Miller, one of them, but all the other guys that have been released and the guys they've signed. How do you really look and see how they've done in this offseason?
I think that's tricky, isn't it? Because it's very rare that you can keep a championship winning team together. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers being the exception that proves the rule, but even that doesn't guarantee success a year later, because you just don't know what's going to happen with injuries and everything else. I think obviously there was always going to have to be a fair bit of movement on the Rams roster this year, because there is a cap. I don't know how Les Snead manages it, how he does, but there is still a cap and there are limits. Look, from a Rams perspective, I never paid too much attention to the draft. I think one thing we have done consistently and that is underrated is that we've taken those late round draft picks and we've turned them into Cooper Cup. And, you look at our sort of defensive starters this year as well, and a lot of those are late round draft picks, and now they're decent players. So there has been that ability to develop players. There's no one that stands out as a great draft pick from this year, because we just didn't have the picks. But, we might have Logan Bruss starting on the O-line, 104th round, 104th pick overall. Good luck to you, Logan. I hope you can hold your own up there. But generally, when you look at the business that they've done, is they've prioritized the two key pieces on offense and the two key pieces on defense. You've still got Jalen Ramsey under contract. You've extended Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and you've paid Aaron Donald. And when you've got those four pieces, those four stars, you build around them. I think Allen Robinson. Now, I was skeptical, not going to lie, when it was like, they've signed Allen Robinson from the Bears. I was like, what has he done? I just don't know. But from the word coming out of training camp and the occasional clips you've seen, Allen Robinson with a decent quarterback for the first time in his career is a different beast and is much more versatile and really adds a sort of multi-dimensional threat. He's not just that slot guy that we all thought he was. So that's exciting. And then Bobby Wagner as well, right? Okay. Past it, old, whatever. And the Rams are an aging team generally. So 3 years' time, I'm not expecting us to be, we've got no draft picks and everyone's getting old. Long term, this really might hurt. But in the meantime, win some championships. I think what we saw with Von Miller last year, and I hope we'll see with Bobby Wagner, is there's something about what they're doing in LA that brings the best back out of these guys. So I'm pretty good about that signing too. I think, if we can get even 70% of the old Bobby Wagner, then that's worth having on your team. So, in conclusion, I was feeling better about things until Van Jefferson got hurt in training camp, like he did today. Fingers crossed it's not too bad, but I still think OBJ is still a free agent, and they haven't signed him because you don't know what's going to happen between now and November time when he's likely to be back healthy. I still think we'll see him in a Rams jersey before February. That's my gut feeling. And Sean McVay was joking about it as well when Van Jefferson got hurt. And when he jokes about OBJ, he usually ends up on the team. So I think it's an okay sort of team. I think it's in decent enough shape, really.
Yeah. I mean, you've still got, I know he's been injured. You still got one of my favorite players, obviously, when he was a Bill, Robert Woods there. I don't know how far.
He's gone.
Is he gone, is he?
Bobby Trees has left the building. He's a Colt now.
Did he? Oh, when did that happen? Oh, I must have missed that.
Very sad about that, actually. But,
Oh, right. That's me.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm looking at.
Sorry, guys, I'll just fact check for you all day. It is my full-time job.
That's true. If I make a mistake, I've got at least a couple people now that actually will be able to correct me. So that's all. I'm all good. I'm all safe. But no, the one guy I like from your pick, your draft pick, is the cornerback you got in round 6, Darian Kendrick. I like him.
You tell me about him, because I have not read up on this guy.
He's a physical guy. He did play. He was a converted wide receiver, so he's going to have that skill set of a wide receiver that he'd be able to translate into his cornerback role. I think going late in round 6, I think there was a load of personal issues. I think a few red flags that made him drop, and having like a season or two at cornerback after making the transition, he is going to be, in my opinion, he could be a really sneaky pick. And like you said, the Rams do well with their late round picks. And I think you're looking at another gem in Kendrick, really, to be honest.
Well, I shall mark his card. I'm excited. I literally haven't heard that name anywhere. I'll have to look him up.
No, definitely.
I'm still midway through my prep.
I could be 100% wrong come the end of the season, but from what I've seen and what I've read about him a few times, he's actually he is a guy that really is one to really look out for, and a guy that has that experience of a wide receiver. So he has that mindset that he can bring into a cornerback position. So any player that that's swapped positions should have a little bit more oomph to them, let's call it that, or a little bit more experience because they know how that position was played. So in my opinion,
I think we're going to see that a lot more because there's so many good wide receivers coming out of college as well that they kind of need to be sort of spread out around the field a bit more. And if he's learning from Jalen Ramsey and Troy Hill, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Do you think?
So, go on, Rob.
Can I ask Hannah a quick question just on the Rams? Do you think, and then we'll do we'll do predictions after that. Do you think that there's a chance that being the Super Bowl champions, the Rams, there's a danger perhaps that they have something of a, I was trying to think of the best way, it's almost like a victory lap year, almost where it's like that they don't quite have the that sort of hunger and determination. It's like we've made it a little bit, and they're still going to be a very dangerous team because of all the players that we've mentioned. They're still going to get their wins, but perhaps it's difficult to win a Super Bowl and then run it back, isn't it? It's difficult to go back to that final game again. Do you think that there's any danger? Not that they would ever take anything easy, but just that sense that they might just ease off just a little bit.
I don't think there's any danger of easing off. I think there's a reason you become a professional athlete or a coach, and it's not because once you've won it once, you sit back and retire. If that was the case, Aaron Donald would have retired. Sean McVay would have taken the Amazon TV money and they'd be rolling all the way to the bank, but they're back in training camp doing what they do. So I don't think an element of complacency. I mean, I don't think that is a thing for professional athletes, and that's what makes them so fascinating to the average Joes like the rest of us. Because I think, well, if I don't 100 mil, I think I'd chill. What's left to do? But I do think it is so hard to run it back, and that's why we've not seen it very often. That's why even the Bucks getting to the divisional round last year, and they were very close to the NFC Championship game. That's hard. We've seen Kansas City and the 49ers be there and thereabouts over the last few years, but it's been no means easy, and there's a reason no one's won back-to-back Super Bowls in recent memory. You've got to go back to the Patriots for that. So I don't think there's a danger of complacency. I think there's the added element, maybe a little bit of it's a copycat league. So you're seeing a lot of these other teams now doing what the Rams did, and the Rams have given away or traded away all their draft capital. So they're not going to be able to make those moves like they could for Von Miller and for OBJ, etc. last year, because other people have caught up to it. I mean, look at what the Broncos have done and the Dolphins are doing. And you just think everyone else is doing that now, and they've still got their capital to give away in exchange. The Rams don't have that, but I'm sure Leslie is coming up with something equally clever because he's a smart guy. And I also think as well, when you're trying to run it back, there's that added fire in everyone's bellies when they're playing their reigning Super Bowl champs, right? Because it's not just the Bills playing the Rams, which is always an entertaining game. It's the Bills playing the Super Bowl champions from last year, and they want to prove a point. Had they got to that game, they could have beaten them. So I think that makes everyone else works that tiny bit harder every week to find a way to beat you.
Yeah. So going into the season, what's your expectations for the Rams? I mean, looking at your schedule, I mean, there are a few hard games on there. Obviously, against the Cardinals, potentially, the Buccaneers. You've got Chiefs in there, Packers possibly. What's your expectation going into the season? Do you foresee them taking the NFC West and actually getting, well, hopefully, in your opinion, getting to the Super Bowl itself? But what's your expectation? Is there any banana skins, so to speak, that could trip up the Rams?
Well, I'm looking at the schedule, and I think the hardest thing for the Rams this year is that the NFC West plays the AFC West. And the AFC West right now is what the NFC West was this time last year. That division is absolutely stacked. I think at a divisional level, the Rams should win the NFC West. I mean, don't know what the Trey Lance, their 49ers are going to be. They could be knockout, lights out. They could be average. You just don't know at this point, which is a little bit nervy because it's the 49ers and they always find a way to be there in January, don't they?
Exactly.
But Seattle, really don't know what's going on there.
No,
they're not the threat they have been. And the Cardinals, although Kyler Murray is a great quarterback, I have some questions around a lot of the other pieces that they've got there and just their ability. And I keep saying this, I sound like such a Cardinals downer person, but just their ability to do it for 17 weeks of regular season football. So I think it would be a real disappointment if the Rams are in the fight for a wild card spot, unless something's gone horribly wrong with injuries and Matthew Stafford's out and Aaron Donald gets hurt. So I think there's an expectation that you win the NFC West. But it's a tough schedule. There's very few when you look at it and go, oh, yeah, that's a win. In fact, I'm looking at one now. I think week 6, Carolina. That's the only one I currently feel. Oh, week 2, Atlanta. Week 6, Carolina. Yeah. We'll take those.
Yeah.
There's 2. But the rest is stuff: Buffalo, Arizona, San Francisco, Dallas, Tampa Bay,
Green Bay,
Raiders,
Chiefs.
Green Bay, Christmas Day, Denver. Like it's a really tough schedule. So I mean, gotta be playing football in January somewhere either. And I do think what we saw from the Rams last year, Matthew Stafford in particular, is that it's those final couple of minutes. That's where we win games. You'd prefer it if you tied up a lot earlier, but when a game's on the line, they are quite happy to be behind in the last 2 minutes, which is heart attack inducing for a fan. But yeah, it's a tough regular season schedule to get through. The NFC is so open now, honestly, it's so hard to predict. But I think I would be very disappointed if they don't win the NFC West and on, there or thereabouts in terms of seeding. I think it's between them, Tampa Bay and Green Bay for those 1, 2, 3 seed spots.
We all know that when that happens, Green Bay will get number 1. They'll probably screw up the first
and then blow it
first week, and then it'll just be Rams.
One of these days, they're going to have to change that narrative. But then, who is Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to? Aaron Rodgers, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
On that money.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins, he's got to come back. Apparently, he's doing quite.
Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, I liked him when he was a.
Yeah, we drafted him.
Yeah,
I like him. It's just bouncing around, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, exactly. Can't stick. But let's predict it then. First, if you can put a prediction on, you don't have to. You can sit on the fence if you want. 37 days time from now, SoFi Stadium, Bills, Rams. Come on, Hannah. What have you got for this? Let's see. Let's see if you can sit on the fence or.
I think I'm going to sit on the fence, guys. I mean, here's my thing. I've got like a head-heart situation, and I hate doing predictions at the best of times, especially 37 days out when no one's played a game of football in 6+ months. And preseason for these 2 teams is going to be wholly irrelevant because we're not going to see many starters for either side on the field.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to risk injury when you're both in, Super Bowl contention, you hope, on paper, theoretically. I think the Rams have to win at home.
Mm-hmm.
As Super Bowl champions in SoFi Stadium, where they last played and lifted the Lombardi Trophy in February. Yeah. But we really struggle against the Bills. And I really hate watching the Rams play the Bills. I love watching the Bills unless they're playing the Rams. And so, yeah, I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm because it's both got good defenses. You've probably got the better defense.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. You've got enough moving parts. I don't know. I think actually the Bills might have the edge, but I really hope I'm wrong. Head versus heart. Heart saying Rams, head saying Bills.
I know. I mean, because the last game, that was pretty much the nail biter. That one where it was the 35-32 to the Bills. Okay, that was
Tyler Croft touchdown.
And that, but the series. I mean. It's 8-5 to the Bills in the series so far. I think your last win, or the last
In what era?
last win was,
all
this
time.
is going back since the 1970. They've replayed each other.
There's only really been about
little.
two. There's only been about two in recent memory. We don't play each other all that often. The one before that was.
I can remember
was
both
St.
those
Louis.
games really clearly, though. There was one really early on in September. Was it last year or year before?
The
Year
2020
before.
one where the Bills led 28-3 and it was over at half time, and then the Rams came roaring back, led 32-28, and then Josh Allen took us downfield with a minute to go, scored with about 10 seconds left. That was an absolute blinder of a game, the proper heartbreaker. But I think before that, and Matt, if you've got it in front of you, I think the one before that was St. Louis, and I think it was when Ryan Fitzpatrick was our quarterback, and we had half a chance of ending what at the time was about a 12-year playoff drought, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think the Rams were having a bad year that year, and we did everything we could to lose the game, and eventually we succeeded in losing, and it sort of ended our playoffs for another year. So I think that was the week after. I think we Packers, and we sacked Aaron Rodgers for a safety to like basically end the game. And it was like, this is it. The drought's coming to an end. Then we go and lose in the Rams, I think, the next week. So, yeah, predictions make fools out of all of us. Go find all the Bills journalists and what they said when Josh Allen got drafted. They've all owned up to it. They've all come back. There's barely a single Bills journalist had a good word to say about Josh Allen when he was drafted.
But also as well, I think this sport more than any other, it's impossible to predict. I've been doing preseason prep and research. A lot of the stuff I read, this sort of same previews every year, and a lot of them literally open up with, it doesn't matter what the team, well, we couldn't have been more wrong. We couldn't have been more wrong. We couldn't, it's impossible, because I think as well, the NFL, there's so much reliance on the data when it comes to formulating previews and all the rest of it. But so often, analytics goes out the window and it's actual moments on the football field. So that's why we love it, right? It's so unpredictable.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So, I mean, Hannah, thank you very much for coming on the show, for previewing the Rams for us, for talking Bills, and obviously talking the international series as well. For everyone that's watching this, because obviously it's going out on YouTube, and actually listening, where can people find you on the
Are we live?
Socials? No, we're not live. No,
no, we're not.
We're not live. No, it's just pre-recording.
Yeah, don't worry.
It's going to be some little live thing in the top corner. Was like, is this a live thing?
No,
sorry. I'm at Hannah J. Wilkes on Instagram and Twitter, and you can see me across Sky Sports on a multitude of things. 9-ball pool next week if anyone wants to watch European Open.
Oh, nice. I love it. Yeah.
Good. That's good. Looking forward to it.
And thank you, actually, Matt. Thank you for schooling me on my own team's draft picks. Always appreciate some extra help getting the facts and figures and info of 32 teams in my head whilst working on other things.
That's all right. I mean, we had a running we've got a running thing going on that Robin will actually testify this. Apparently our other co-host Mark actually was the one that made the play and made the push for Kyrie Lamb in the first round.
Yeah.
Whereas they seem to forget that back in January I said first round pick will be Kyrie Lamb, and I was on the.
There is absolutely no evidence that this ever took place, and we think that Matt has been working too hard.
Hey, you have to take credit where you can, even if no one else can.
Exactly. I'll find the information. I'll put it on there and I'll prove it to them. But they're just non-believers. We'll leave it. But no, Hannah, thank you very, very much for joining us on the Red, White, and Buffalo Blues.
Thanks for having me, guys, and go Buffalo.
Thanks, Anna. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
You can say
Smash
go
some tables. Eat some wings.
You say go rounds if you want. We'll let you have that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Whose house? Rams house.